96.5 CTG, the original 70s soundtrack. I'm Alan Barnes, and I have on the phone with me live music legend Gary Wright. How you doing, Gary?
Great, Alan. How are you today?
Good. Calling in from Los Angeles, I believe.
Yes, I am.
Gary Wright is responsible for some great songs like Dreamweaver, My Love Is Alive, I Really Want to Know You, and that's really just scratching the surface. Those are the things that most of the general music population would know him for, but there's actually so much more, so we'll come back to that. Just going into your history a little bit, I think something a whole lot of people didn't realize that you actually started out in Spooky Tooth.
Yes, that's correct. That was the first. That was the first band I was really in professionally. Yeah, it was more. Spooky Tooth was more of a cult band, and it spawned a lot of big groups that came after, from the various members that left the group and went on to do other projects. Like Mick Jones went on to start Foreigner. I had my solo career. Luther Grosvenor did Mott the Hoople as Ariel Bender. He changed his name. And Greg Ridley, the original bass player, was the original bass player in Humble Pie.
Did you have trouble finding your space in there? I mean, because like a keyboard covers so much turf sonically. Did it get kind of crowded in the mix or arrangements at times, or?
Well, it was Spooky Tooth was more of I mean, the guitars definitely were. There was rarely keyboard solos. It was mainly guitar solos, which was kind of like par for the course for that kind of a band.
Right.
It wasn't like the Nice or like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, one of those bands. So that's why I think I kind of rebelled against that when I did the Dreamweaver album, and I did just all keyboards.
And I think it was when you were in Spooky Tooth. Is that when you met actually George Harrison?
Yeah, I met George in 1970 when I was invited to play on his album by Klaus Voormann, actually. And then when George met me and I played on the first track, which was Isn't It a Pity, George asked me to come back, and I wound up playing on all the rest of his albums, as well as All Things Must Pass.
Yeah, and All Things Must Pass was the first one, I think, right out of the gate, correct?
Yes.
I mean, here we had George Harrison and the Beatles, and he was sort of being kept under wraps, a song or two per album. And then he blows up with this 3-album set. I think he had so much good material stored up and surprised everybody. I don't think anybody picked George to be the first Beatle out of the chute to have the huge success that he did.
I think he had more success than any of the other solo Beatles did.
And that was like a stellar lineup on that record. I mean, Phil Spector produced that, correct?
Right.
Some of the people that were on that, I think, like I'd seen like Eric Clapton, Dave Mason. And I think, speaking of Procol Harum, you did some keyboard duty sharing with Gary Brooker on that.
Yeah, we weren't on at the same time, but I can't remember. We may have been. Phil Collins, I know, was there, and Billy Preston. I co-wrote 2 songs on his albums too. One, If You Believe, on the George Harrison album,
right,
and on Cloud 9, If That's What It Takes.
So it's along that period, I guess, and you were still in Spooky Tooth, and at some point, I mean, how did it end up where you decided to sort of go it solo?
Well, I left Spooky Tooth actually in 1969 originally, and then that's when I started playing with George, and I did other sessions. I played on Harry Nilsson's song Without You. That was me on piano.
That's right. Yeah.
B.B. King, Jerry Lee Lewis, when they came to London, I was did their projects too. I did my first 2 solo albums for A&M. Extraction and Footprint. George played guitar and produced one of the tracks on Footprint. That was that little piece you've seen maybe on the Dick Cavett show where he plays guitar. And then I went back to reform Spooky Tooth, and I think it was like 1973 for a couple of more albums. And we finally disbanded in 74, and that's when I went on to do my solo career with Warner Brothers, and the first album I did was Dreamweaver.
I don't think people really get how, from a synthesis standpoint, how groundbreaking the sounds were on that. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I think there's real drums on that, but pretty much, I mean, you cover all the bass there too. Is that right? Or
I played all the synthesizer parts. I played all the keyboard basses. I used different just piano players. David Foster played on piano, the Rhodes piano on Dreamweaver, and several of the other tracks. And Bobby Lyle played Rhodes and clavinet on a couple of the other tracks.
See, now that surprises me too, because I mean, I know that you are definitely considered to be someone that has like some serious keyboard chops. I mean, what was really going through your mind when you're thinking about like bringing on somebody? Is it just you wanted another set of hands, or?
I just wanted, yeah, exactly, another set of different, a different feel, because these guys are incredible keyboard players,
right?
And it just added yet another texture to the production.
And I think My Love Is Alive was on the Dreamweaver too, correct?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, see, now I like that one. That's the one that I have to. I mean, obviously, everybody knows Dreamweaver is, even though both songs pretty much charted at the, I think they both went to number two. But I really dig My Love Is Alive because to me, that's just a sexier, funkier kind of. To me, it's completely different from Dreamweaver, but yet similar.
Yeah, I think most musicians do feel that way. You kind of speak for all the musician friends that I have who like Love Is Alive the best, just because of the riff, I guess. And I like both of them. So it's a toss up.
It's a sexy riff. I mean, I think I read somewhere that it was in the '80s or maybe it was on the A Feel for You album that Chaka Khan covered it.
Chaka Khan covered it. Joe Cocker covered it. Anastasia covered it.
Wow.
And it's also been sampled on like Maya, Moving Out. That was the riff. Tone Loc.
Okay, yeah.
Third bass. It's been used a lot.
How does that work? We had a discussion with Casey of the Sunshine Band, and the soapbox I tend to try to get on is I have a real problem with people that download free music. And the perception that people will have is that these rich rock stars, they've got plenty of money already, and it's no big whoop if I download it. And in the case of Casey and the Sunshine Band, there's a group that sold over 100 million records. I mean, his stuff has been used in movies. It's still on commercials. So he's getting paid, yes, but he still has to tour. He still has to do shows to generate income. And I think people watch Cribs and stuff like that on MTV, and they get this impression that basically you can have 2 million sellers and you're a billionaire for life, so it's okay to steal it.
No, that's totally wrong. Whether you steal from a rich person or a poor person, you're still stealing. It's not because one person has more than therefore it justifies it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's almost this Robin Hood mentality. I just don't get it. And again, I'm a musician myself, so I just find that it's like, gosh, if you like something and you really enjoy the music, go ahead and buy it, because that's how you're supporting.
Yeah, they don't realize how hard artists work to do an album, all the sweat and the work that you put into it, and then just to go out and blatantly steal it is awful. And the last album I just did as well it's mainly a keyboard album. It's the one I just released in June called Connected, and I do have 2 guitar players playing on it. Joe Walsh and Skunk Baxter.
We'll jump right into that. As a matter of fact, I've seen on your website you have a new CD out called Connected, and I really like what I've heard. The background vocals are stellar. Those 2 girls, they did you a solid. Those girls that you've got doing the background vocals.
Oh yeah, Lisa and Valerie. Yeah.
That's good stuff. That's really good stuff. And what I like about it is it's current, but it's still it's obvious that it's you. I mean, and then you've got some cool guest stars on there too. I think Ringo gave you an assist there too.
Yeah, Ringo played on the track Satisfied. That's correct.
Yeah, and of course Joe Walsh, for people who don't know, Skunk Baxter was a killer session / band guitarist from Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers, I think most famously. But and explain the philosophy behind Connected about music as far as connecting everybody.
Well, I think it's not only music; it's everything really. That we're all connected in our consciousness by the thoughts we think, and thoughts, I think people's collective thoughts definitely change the consciousness of the whole planet and where it goes, and so we really have to be cognizant of that and be careful what we think and the kinds of thoughts we put out there, because and we just have to be careful that what we're doing is positive and beneficial for each of us and the planet. And music has a big part to play in that too, because positive music, uplifting music, again, helps uplift everything, whereas negative degrades everything. Right. So